Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. If you want to change the world, don't ever, ever ring the bell.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour presented by Kill Clip Performance Drinks.
Enjoy drinking Kill Clip after sweaty workouts, big rides, full rounds, long days, longer nights, or whenever you feel the need to get back up to full speed.
Kill Clip Performance Drinks for Warriors. Ignite, endure, recover. And now, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into another episode of Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Clip. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. This week's guest is a Team USA wrestler. He is ranked number 1 right now at the 189-pound division. He's a Penn State graduate and currently aiming for the Olympic team in 2020. He is David Taylor here on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Clip. David, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, this is crazy because I've yet to interview a wrestler, like a professional one. I guess it's professional at this point in time. But when you say professional wrestler, most people think of WWE. I mean, this is the real stuff here as you shoot for the Olympics. Let's start back at the very beginning, because wrestling is one of those sports that not a lot of kids grow up saying, I want to be a wrestler. You know, they get into other sports and kind of just stumble into wrestling as a way to train or something to kind of bridge the time in between other sports and other seasons. Was that the case for you, or did you know you always wanted to wrestle?
No, I didn't. I woke up, not as a kid, and I was always have high energy. I was always running around, doing different things. My parents were always, trying to calm me down, and I played a few other sports as a young kid, but I started wrestling when I was 5 years old, and actually my mom saw an ad in the paper. At the time, we lived in Evanston, Wyoming, and for wrestling practice, Red Devil Wrestling Club. And my mom put me in practice, and I was pretty clueless, but I've always been pretty focused and pretty determined. It's always sort of been my personality, even as a young kid, very competitive. And I wasn't very good to start, but as the year went on, I made a little bit of progress. And actually by the end of the year, the very last tournament of just a local league, I won the last tournament. And as we were leaving tournament, I just asked my dad, what's the next thing? And he said, well, son, practice, season's over, and wait till next year. And although I had been beaten all year and didn't really have much success, I just fell in love with it at an early age.
So, but like when you say you started wrestling at 5, do you mean like you're wrestling with your brother, with friends, with a sibling? Like what, were you formally wrestling at 5, or was this just playtime kind of wrestling?
So typically, those that have a wrestling background or even those that don't, when you go sign up for a wrestling program, there's always some kind of youth league of some sort, whether it's associated to a high school or to a private club, or there's always different aspects. For me, it was just whatever the local youth wrestling program that, that fed into your junior high program and eventually into your high school program. At the time, like I said, I lived in Evanston, Wyoming. So it was just the Red Devil Wrestling Club. Showed up, and there's a couple days a week. There's typically at that point, there's just volunteer coaches, whether they're dads or, junior high or high school coaches that are just trying to help develop the future of their programs, so it was organized to an extent, but still pretty basic. At that point, you're just trying to get kids to retain some information and hopefully like wrestling. At 5, typically you're not thinking, oh, these kids are going to wrestle 20 years later,
right?
But you're just hoping that they're going to stay for the next year, and then once they get a couple years under their belt and they'll kind of get some idea what they're doing, you can start pursuing tournaments on a more frequent basis. But typically when you sign up, you pay your some kind of membership fee. You get a singlet, you get to go to the local league tournaments. There might be 4 or 5 different programs, and you go around, you wrestle teams, or there may be dual meets. Pretty short season, maybe a couple of months, 10, 15 matches type of thing, but just enough to see if a young kid's interested.
Now, you mentioned you were playing other sports too. Your friends who were all playing sort of the mainstream ones, baseball, football, basketball, whatever it may be, you never had a desire to kind of just do what they were doing because that's what your friends were doing?
I've always been a little bit unique in that aspect of just not really wanting to just kind of follow along. And just even at that age, just team sports, I struggled with a little bit because I was so competitive. And it was just a little bit of a challenge, where wrestling it's pretty much directly, especially as I got a little bit older, directly the amount of effort that I put into the sport, I saw the returns when I was competing. Whereas in a team sport, you're relying on so many other people, which is a plus and a minus. If you don't necessarily thrive under, pressure of, hey, if you don't go out and get the opportunity, you take the most out of this opportunity, you may lose it. Where in a team sport, you may have 10 other people that have good games and you don't necessarily have a bad game. And I did play some other sports, but I was also I played soccer and I played t-ball, and I did those things growing up. And as I got a little older, I played football, but I was always small. I'm not small now, but growing up, I matured very late. So especially as I got a little bit older, I was just too small to really be ultra competitive in those other sports. Whereas wrestling, with the weight classes and it just I kind of found a niche that worked really well for me.
Did you find that the wrestling was more of a mental challenge than any of the other sports?
Absolutely. I mean, wrestling is a very unique sport. I mean, just to put it, I guess, is when you go out and compete, you are just wrestling against one other person. And ultimately, talent will get you to a certain extent, but you have to have just the extras. In a very tough competitive match, you have to sort of just want it more than your opponent wants it. And I think that mental challenge that was something that always has motivated me from a really, really young age.
Now, I'm curious, because take me through the beginning in your high school years. This is kind of junior high or even elementary school that you're doing all this. Are you gearing yourself up to wrestle in high school? Is that like the sole focus?
So when, I started wrestling, I was 5. By the time I was 6, I was doing a little bit better. At 7, I was pretty successful in the local area, and I was just extremely fortunate. Looking back, you don't really understand the sacrifices your parents are making you when you're 8 years old. I just got put in the back of a car and started playing my Game Boy for, until it was time to go to practice. But, looking back, so, I started, my dad specifically, and my mom, well, both of them, but just the sacrifices that they made. I spent a lot of hours on the road where my parents were seeking out the best competition they possibly could. So living in Wyoming, I started driving an hour and 20 minutes to Utah a couple of days a week to start seeking out better competition. And at one point that became an hour and 45-minute drive a couple of days a week for competition. So, as it continued to evolve, and as I continued to be more and more hungry and look to achieve my goals, my parents tried to source those as much as possible. So, kind of answer your question, what I was looking for. At 8 years old, I wrote down 3 goals on a piece of paper. I said I want to be a 4-time state champion, a 4-time national champion. I wanted to win the Olympics. And I think, again, I was always pretty driven. Looking back at 8 years old, I didn't even probably understood what that really meant. But it was just something I could always think about, so as I got older.
That's just amazing. At 8 years old, to be able to clearly define those goals. At 8 years old, sure, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Like, I wanted to play shortstop for the Yankees. Like, that much I knew. But the idea that you could articulate, those specific things. It's not like I said I wanted to win a batting title in high school and I wanted to win, all state honors. I mean, I just wanted to play, like to have that sort of clarity at that age. When you look back on it, did that surprise you?
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not really sure, what that probably meant. But I was always watching, we get the USA Wrestling magazines in the mail or whatever it was. And the first thing I do is I flip to the rankings page, and I could pretty much tell you who was ranked at what weight class and what their accomplishments were. We have videotapes. So when I was working out in the basement, I would just watch highlight reels of the NCAA tournament. So that's the national tournament for the collegiate wrestling. And I just watched those, and I would just see what the techniques they were doing and see their mannerisms and what they did when they won or what trying to relate to how they felt when they lost. And so at a young age, I was forming that mentality of, I want to be there, and I want to wrestle like these guys. And now, even when I'm 8 years old, so I would start implementing techniques that I would watch on TV or watch on a high-level match or collegiate match in the national finals, the next practice I'd be trying it, and then I'd be implementing it in the tournament that weekend. So I just think that, my dad just always saw that I was motivated a certain way, and just kind of always kept me very humble, and always challenged me. I would go wrestle in a tournament, where most kids are, cutting weight and trying to just focus on winning. My dad was, a little bit of the opposite. He would wrestle me up a weight class. I'd wrestle 2 weight classes or 2 divisions to try and get as many matches as I possibly could. And it was like practice. He'd say, why don't you go and try 5 different takedowns, and then before you go pin the guy, So I was just, like I said, just kind of feeding into that mentality of trying to always challenge myself in that really competitive side. And ultimately, it made a huge difference as I developed that confidence and that technique and the mentality as I got older.
David Taylor, Team USA wrestler, joining us here on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. Okay, so you get to high school, and, is this one of the things where the coach knew you ahead of time, or he had no idea who you were? Did you walk in and kind of tell him, look, coach, I'm going to win states 4 times for you kind of deal, or kind of set this whole scene for me?
So, speaking of just the sacrifices that my family was making, so we were driving, for a couple days a week, 4.5, 5 hours round trip, plus practice time. So as I got into 6th grade, my family made the decision that we were going to move from Wyoming to Ohio, for a better wrestling opportunity and environment.
That's crazy. But your parents moved their entire family just so you could wrestle in a better place.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
Like I said, we'd spent so much time traveling. And at that point, I was making the decision of, I really loved what I was doing. And, they wanted to make the sacrifice. They've been making so many sacrifices for a long time, but instead of driving an hour and 45 minutes to practice, I was 10 minutes away. And I had been going to out to that area for camps, and I had developed relationships with kids. And the Midwest is just a hotbed for wrestling. Being Ohio, Pennsylvania, and being able to wrestle those guys, it was a really good opportunity to really challenge myself against the best opponents. And even like a lot of sports, even at 6th, 7th grade, I mean, your kids are specializing in a sport, and I specialized specifically in wrestling at that point. And instead of traveling all the time to get those competitions, I then had a really good training environment. I had really good practice partners. It was a lot closer. I could practice 4 or 5 days a week. My family didn't have to travel to as many tournaments on the weekends because I was able to, get. So as I went to middle school, I ended up going to that high school program. So, just the coaches and the guys I went to school with were all familiar with each other because we'd been together for, 6th grade all through my high school years.
All right, and so the coach knows you, and I mean, he's grooming you for this the whole time, right? And so when you start wrestling in high school, is it just are you just ripping people to shreds and beating everybody? I was so it was a little bit of a challenge. I weighed about 98 pounds my freshman year. The weight class is 103. So I had some challenges along the way. So coming into high school, I was one of the top junior high wrestler in the country. So there's a lot of expectation of, being a multi-time state champion and just the future or what I was going to do. So actually my very first tournament was a home tournament. I was wrestling a guy who I think I was ranked 5th or 6th in the country as an incoming freshman. In the very first match, I had a guy who was ranked about the same, who was a pretty tough kid. And I actually lost. I lost my very first tournament. So, oh, wow.
Which was tough. It was just a local tournament. So I remember going back and, being pretty upset. And there was a lot of, I think a lot of people in that situation, being undersized and going that they're going to be in a very competitive schedule against high level competitions, they would choose to be held back to try and develop for a little bit. It was important to me. I wanted to always do things the right way. So it was important to me to not. I wanted the challenge. So the following weekend is a tournament called the Ironman, which in high school wrestling is known as the toughest pound for pound high school tournament in the country. It's up in Walsh Jesuit, Ohio, and pretty much the who's of competitors. At that time, it was teams, and that was the first year that I actually started inviting individuals in to make it even tougher. So, my freshman year going to that tournament, I had pretty much all the kids ranked top 10 in the country were in that tournament. And I actually wrestled the guy that beat me the weekend before in the semifinals. I was losing. I came back and beat him. And I went on to beat a guy from California who came in like an individual, not part of a team, to come in just to make the tournament tough. And I beat him in the finals. So, that really kicked off my high school career, winning that tournament. And then I went on to, win a state championship that year. And kind of, my high school career, it started off on the foot that I had planned and been focusing for a long time.
I'm just curious. Was that the only match you lost in high school? Was that first one?
I lost 2, so I lost as a sophomore as well, and so I finished at 180 and 2 was my high school record.
Wow. So I imagine those 2 losses stick with you a lot more than the wins.
Yeah, they do. I think there was such a long time ago, and I had very big aspirations, past high school. So but at the time, they meant a lot. They were very heartbreaking losses. Because being a competitor that I was, I really believed I could be undefeated. I could be a 4-time undefeated state champion. Or an undefeated doing what I did, because I'd always held myself to that standard. So yeah, at the times, they both were really tough losses. I'd say, my freshman year wasn't as tough. I'd say my sophomore year loss was a little bit tougher. Just that was a guy that I kind of had a little bit of rivalry with. We wrestled 4 times in high school. His name was Jamie Clark, and all of the matches were very difficult matches. But ultimately, I was challenged quite a bit. I had some really high level matches, specifically at that tournament I mentioned before, the Ironman tournament. With the high level of it was, I wrestled some really good competitors. My sophomore year, I wrestled Logan Stieber, who he also won 4 Ohio State championships. He went on to win 4 national championships, and he was a world champion in 2016. And we wrestled each other in the finals of that tournament in our second year. So that's just kind of the level of competition that was going on at that tournament.
Did it matter to you whether you pinned a guy or you won on points, or you just wanted to win? You didn't care?
No, I always want to dominate my opponents. It's something that is unique, and I've always really prided myself is I do all the work and all the effort that I do. I don't ever want to go out to just win a match. I want to dominate my opponent. So, I've always held myself to that standard. I want to go out and win. So in wrestling, it's called bonus points. So a decision is 7 if you win by 7 points or less. So when you win by 8, so when you're from 8 to 15 points, it's called a major decision. Once you're up by 15 points a match, that's a technical fall. And then anytime you pin the guy, the match is over. So, right. In terms of in my career, I've had a very high rate of bonus point matches and very few decisions, just because, I just always tried to score as many points as I possibly could in any position.
He is David Taylor, professional wrestler, Team USA wrestler. When we come back, we'll move on from his journey to high school on to Penn State and eventually to trying out for the Olympics. That's all coming up next on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour, presented by Kill Cliff Performance Drinks.
Kill Cliff, performance drinks for warriors, to get you up, get you through, and get you back to full speed.
And now, back to the show with host Mark Zinno.
Welcome back to Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. This week's guest is David Taylor. David, Team USA wrestler, ranked number 1 in the world in his weight class, 189 pounds. And we last left off, David finished up his high school career, 180-2 record. And we are on to the next phase in college and Penn State. So I always am curious about the recruiting process. Did you know that you wanted to go to Penn State? I'm sure you had options out there. I'm fairly certain Iowa is one of the biggest wrestling schools in the country. And so what was that process like for you as you were going through the end of high school?
Yeah, being recruited it's a fun time. It's fun when people will come in and these guys that you've looked up to your whole life are sitting on your couch and they're telling you, pretty much everything you want to hear, and you want to go to their school. But if you extend it, having a lot of options like that is also stressful. Trying to just sit, people that you've had relationships with for a long time, and trying to figure out, where you're going to school, because it's something that impacts the rest of your life. Unlike some other professional sports, like in college football or college basketball, they're going for a short period of time. They're going on to the NFL, they're going on to the NBA, whereas, being a high level guy in high school, you're going to that place and typically you're going for the next 5 years of your life. But, for me, I've been at Penn State for 10 years. So, it's just, you're really, when you're making that decision to go to college, it's about a family, about picking where you really can see yourself developing as a wrestler. A lot of places they're out there where you'll go to school, and I remember thinking that, I could go to these schools and I thought I could be a great wrestler. But there were only a couple places that I really believed that could develop me from every aspect to become, the best in the world. And that's ultimately, when picking Penn State, that's what I saw. And my relationship with the head coach, Cael Sanderson, and his family went back to when I rewind back to when my family was traveling to Utah. We used to go to Cael Sanderson's dad, Steve Sanderson, had a wrestling program. So I actually had met Cael and his family when I was 8 years old. So, having that impact for a really long time. And we talked earlier also about, trying to go out and if I won by regular decision or trying to pin, Cael really changed the sport of wrestling by going out and dominating. He was one of the first people, you watch him wrestle, and he was just trying to dominate his opponents, whether it was the NCAA finals or whatever. He was an undefeated 4-time national champion himself. So in watching him growing up, trying to emulate my style off of what he was doing, it was a perfect fit for me to go to school for him at Penn State. So, making that decision was, looking back on my, I've been wrestling for 23 years. That was probably the best decision I've made in my life in terms of my wrestling career, was coming to Penn State and being around this environment.
It's interesting. You mentioned Cael Sanderson, one of the most noted wrestlers, in history, in American history. What was it like meeting him? Was that like an honor for you? Was that somebody you looked up to as you were going through your younger wrestling career?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, at the time he was just a freshman in college, and I was just some little kid, so I didn't really know what he was going to do. But meeting him at that point in his life, and then going on to follow, I remember when he won his first national championship, and pretty much watched him all the way through. Huge impact. And not even necessarily the words that he said to me at that time, but just having some kind of knowledge of who he was and a relationship to him, and just being able to follow and emulate. I mean, his style changed the sport of wrestling. His coaching style now is changing the dynamic of college wrestling. And it had a big impact on all the athletes that he's been able, to coach, but just the impact he had on me in the way that I wrestle, by just trying to follow in his footsteps of how he wrestled, and that just changed my career for the better. At a time he probably had no idea, but it ended up working out really well because, we were able to be together and create something really special at Penn State.
When you have somebody of that caliber that, you're close to and you work with, how much better does it make you?
Well, I'm a big believer in you're a product of your environment. So it's Coach Cael, but the culture that he creates. And, I have really good relationships with all of our coaches, and they're still the coaches that I have in my corner today, wrestling at the world championships and wrestling around the world. These are the same coaches that I want in my corner at every step of the way. So, you're just, the impact they have is from a coaching, from a physical, from mental. Again, when you're in college, you're still a pretty young kid, so you're developing a lot of, you're instilling those things that you're going to have for the rest of your life, whether they're on the mat or off the mat. So, just that the environment of where you are has a huge impact on how you end up being as a person, but also just as, how you're going to conduct yourself as an athlete as well.
David, I got to ask you, did you ever try to wrestle Cael?
I wrestle him, a lot. He just.
Not like in practice. I mean, like, kind of in Rocky 3, how Rocky and Apollo decide at the end they're going to fight, like, for real to see who can win this thing. Was it ever that where you brought a ref in to referee the match and everything, like, or was it just always messing around kind of wrestling?
No, it's practice.
Okay, all right.
But well, there's a little bit of messing around, but it's always a little serious as well, So it's a good opportunity.
I was just curious. I mean, obviously, when you get somebody of that caliber, and you just want to, I think it's that thing where you want to prove to yourself that you can hang in the circle with them, right?
Well, anytime I wrestle with them, I'm trying to do that. Just trying to challenge. You're constantly trying to challenge yourself. Again, going back to what makes wrestling so unique is when I step into practice today. If I'm feeling tired or sorry for myself or whatever it may be, and that my partner feels good and he kind of sensed that, he could try to kick my butt, and vice versa. So when you go in there and you're wrestling a person of that caliber, you got to be ready to go and fire on all cylinders at all times, and so it's good. It's good to always be challenged.
All right, David, you lost the first match of your high school career. How does your college career start?
So my college career started in a little bit of a better fashion. So I, stepping into college, same thing. I redshirted my freshman year. So just to continue to develop, I matured really late. So my senior year in high school was 135 pounds. I came to college with the intention to wrestle 157 pounds. So I was still growing a lot. So that first year was really important to me to develop. And when I started my freshman year, I started guns blazing. I was just still young, extremely fired up and hungry. My intention was to be, going back to those goals, be a 4-time national champion. And I believed I could be a 4-time undefeated national champion and follow in Coach Cael's footsteps. And I wrestled the regular season as a freshman, and I was undefeated into the national tournament. And I actually into the national finals, and I ended up losing in the national finals. I was in a position, and I got pinned in the finals, which was very difficult.
Oh wow!
Time, just having that emotion as the year was going on, just the building and the hype around, wow, it could really be potential. And going as a redshirt freshman, I think I'd only had 4 or 5 regular decisions that year as well. So of all the matches that I had were by bonus points, all but 4 or 5 of them. So, I was going in and trying to establish my, the way that I wanted to wrestle for the rest of my career. And I wrestled a guy who was a senior, he'd been in the national finals before. And we were in a scramble in the second period, and he caught me in a cradle and pinned me. And I remember, leaving the mat just feeling like couldn't even really realize what just happened. And that loss actually affected me for quite a long time. Just, again, being such a young kid, 19 years old, and, having those big aspirations and being, so close to starting it off. That first one is such an elusive one, obviously, to get. And but, looking back, it forced me to continue to evolve and not get too, excited about, or comfortable. And my as a sophomore, I rebounded well. I ended up being an undefeated national champion as a sophomore. In the national tournament, I had 4 pins in the finals. I teched my opponent, so I beat him 22-7. Wow. So, and so it was, that was kind of a whirlwind. It was like a delayed. I think in today's world, we want like instant satisfaction. We want to do something and see the results right away, and that it just doesn't always happen like that. And it took me 2 years, to 3 years, redshirting year, and then 2 full years to be able to become a national champion, something I had thought about for, at that point, it had been 11, 12 years. So, which was exciting. It was exciting to finally become a national champ. Obviously, something I had envisioned for a long time. And I wish I was a freshman, but it was something that continued to keep me focused. Then as a junior, it was probably, I was a 2-time national finals, national champ. There was a guy that I grew up with that was he had won 3 national championships. He was going to be a senior. I was going to be a junior. We were always one weight class apart. So that year we went the same weight class, and it became probably one of the most hyped up national finals matches of all time. So his name was Cael Sanderson, and basically going into the national finals, he was going for his 4th national championship. I was going for my 2nd. And he ended up beating me in a pretty close match. And, he won his 4th national championship, and I lost as a junior. And then I was able to come back my senior year and go undefeated and win as a senior. So I ended up as a 4-time national finalist and 2-time national champ. I fell a little short of my goal, at 8 years old, but, looking back, I was pretty close.
It certainly is. I mean, I wonder, when you look back on it, and you think about the 8-year-old that wanted those goals, and then the 21, 22-year-old who got there, was it disappointing, or were you just proud of what you had accomplished, realizing how much work had to go into it?
I'd say it's a little mixed. I think I look back and just how close just to be a 1-time national champ is pretty difficult. And have the opportunity to have won 4. It is. It's you look back like, wow, maybe if I would have done things a little bit differently, things could have been different. But you can't live your life thinking that way. So, ultimately, I'm very proud of being in the situation and just building my reputation of wrestling the way that I wanted to wrestle, going out and trying to score as many points as I possibly could from every single situation. And, it was just, it was an amazing experience. And I'm just very fortunate, very grateful to be in a unique opportunity with great coaches and be a part of very, very successful teams with great teammates that were always pushing me.
I want to stay with the losses for a minute, just because. Are you the type of guy who replays those losses in your head still, or have you flushed them and moved on?
I mean, you always replay them a little bit. I think looking back, some of them, but I lost twice in high school and 3 times in college. So, those matches are, they're not. I remember every one of them. It's not things I don't forget them. But at this point in my career, they're just part of what's defined me, part of what's got me to this point. And you never know if things would change. Maybe I wouldn't have the motivation, the hunger that I do now if I would have achieved those things I wanted to achieve. But I think falling a little bit short has just continued to keep me really hungry to continue to want to achieve things as I get later in my career.
Do you remember what your coaches told you after those losses? Do you remember any of the words that they said? Were they futile at the time, or was it just kind of one of those things that sticks with you?
In college, my losses were some pretty emotional ones, losing the national finals, but it, ultimately just, my coaches were they're proud of me. And, it's just, continue to make adjustments and make changes, the same coaches that I still have today. So, it's, I wouldn't have been in those. I mean, I probably wouldn't have been in those situations without them. They continue to challenge me every day and help me in every way they possibly could. So, my relationship with my coaches weren't just it wasn't a coach-athlete relationship. The coaches to me are like big brothers and mentors. So, having that close relationship and, putting a lot of time in with them, so, it was, on both ends, they were there for me, and they felt that, the pain that we felt, but, at the same time, we've been able to continue to do a lot of really good things together. So it's just part of the process.
Let me pivot here real quick to something that's critically important to wrestling, obviously nutrition, and how you're eating and what you're eating. How difficult is that, not only in high school, but in college as well? Everybody's ordering pizza on Friday nights and this, that, and the other. I mean, the willpower and the mental discipline has to be off the charts to not slip, right?
I think it's always a constant balance. And as a young, I was always very disciplined with my weight, but I wasn't necessarily disciplined with my nutrition. And that's one thing I look back and be like, wow, if I had any clue on the nutritional aspect, how much better could I have felt? Or the times when I got tired. Well, maybe I would have got tired if I would have changed those things. But it only can help mold today. Make the decision that I can make today for tomorrow. And but nutrition at the time, I was always very disciplined, like I said, and it just, I just talked about, it's like, when you're Thanksgiving, you can have a piece of pie, you can't have the whole pie. I think as a wrestler, that's kind of the way that you got to think, is you just kind of always have to understand, well, the more disciplined that you can be with your weight, the less difficult it's going to be to make weight. And the less disciplined you are on your weight management, the more difficult it's going to make. And I think when, most sports, you're trying to do everything you possibly can to feel your best on competition day. In wrestling, it's the opposite. You're competing at the highest level when you kind of feel the worst. You might start the week at a few pounds overweight, and when you make weight, you're the lightest, skinniest, probably the most hungry you're going to be of the week, and then you got to go compete an hour after that in college.
Wow.
So that's it's kind of a unique thing, and I think that's just what molds that mental toughness in the sport of wrestling.
So it's not necessarily like you're prohibited from eating certain foods. I mean, just in wrestling, it's just about staying at a certain weight. It doesn't really matter what you eat. Is that, I don't want to, that sounds kind of bad when you say it that way. Obviously, it matters what you put in your body. You're an athlete. But was it more about just not gaining weight as opposed to eating the right things? At the time, that's what I believed. I think, I always remember looking at things and saying, oh, well, this only weighs 2/10. I'll be all right. But now, like I said, I was so uneducated on the nutritional aspect. But at this point, to be, I was trying to be the best in the country at the time, but to be the best in the world, nutrition is one of the number one factors in my success. And I value everything that I put in my body from the time I wake up in the morning to the night I go to bed, and understanding its benefit. So just, I think it's the difference between being an amateur, being in college, and being a professional athlete of trying, this is my livelihood. So, every aspect of my life is really important, and that's the difference. If it can make a tiny 1.1% when wrestling the returning world Olympic champion of the world championships, I can go in that match with full confidence because of the discipline and time spent in trying to really focus on my nutritional profile and it being as good as possible. So I think that's just a good example of as you go through and learning from your past and understanding that, well, if you
want to fulfill your goals, you got to fulfill every single bucket to the best of your abilities.
He is David Taylor, Team USA wrestler, two-time national champion. When we come back, his post-career at Penn State and on to the Olympics. Don't go anywhere. This is Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. We'll be right back.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour presented by Kill Cliff Performance Drinks, proud partner of the Navy SEAL Foundation.
Welcome back to Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Cliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. This week's guest, two-time national champion, currently ranked number 1 in the world wrestling. He is David Taylor, joining us here on Kill the Quit. David, we last left off. You finished your college career at Penn State. You won 2 national titles, and now the 8-year-old kid that said he wanted to go to the Olympics is now looking at that possibility right in the face. So how does this whole process start once you get done with college?
So once you graduate college, you basically start wrestling internationally, and the way that the international tournaments are is you basically have 3 world championships and you have the Olympics every 4 years. So we had Olympics 2016, we had the 2017 World Championships, 18 World Championships, 19 World Championships, and then 2020 Olympics. Those World Championship locations will be in a different place every year. And then obviously the Olympic Games in 2020 have already been established. They're in Tokyo, Japan. So the World Championships in wrestling, the World Championships, the Olympic Championships are, they're very similar in terms of difficulty to win. They're the same. I would say that because you're wrestling the same competitors, the big difference between the Worlds and the Olympics is the World Championships, all you have to do is just participate as a country in your continental championship. So for us, the Pan American Championship. So as a country, USA, if we just went and wrestled in it, we could send a representative to the World Championships.
Right.
But I mean, typically, not every participant's going to go because, for different reasons. So you're basically, this year at the World Championships, I think there was 30 guys in my weight. So you're wrestling 30 national champions from 30 different countries, that have qualified to be at the World Championships. And you wrestle down to just the champion. Whereas in the Olympics, only 16 guys qualify at each weight class. Also, in the World Championships, we have 10 weights. At the Olympics, we shrink to 6. So 4 world champions will be eliminated and have to basically go to an Olympic weight class. So that's what makes the Olympics it's just the prestige of the Olympic Games, the difficulty of only 16 countries, basically cutting that in half to qualify to be in the Olympics, and then from each country standpoint, taking your 10-man world team and shrinking it to 6-man Olympic team. So, but in terms of the process of becoming a world champion and becoming an Olympic champion, you have to make your world team in the United States, and then you get to go wrestle in the World Championships. And this year, 2018 was the first world team that I've been able to make. I graduated in college in 2014, so I had to face some adversity of not being able to achieve. In my life, I've always been right in the mix, of being one of the best guys. And I was second or third on the national team there for 4 years. But continue to refine what I was doing. I spent a lot of that time. I graduated college at 165 pounds. I thought that the transition to freestyle wrestling for me was at 74 kilos, which is 163. But as I was still maturing, trying to hold my weight at 163 pounds, I wasn't able to really train fully because I was battling a lot of just chronic injuries. I wasn't really enjoying the process. And I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So I decided at the end of 2016, that I would go up to 86 kilos. So a 26-pound weight jump to 189 pounds. And since making that jump, that's my first best decision I made in wrestling was coming to Penn State. My second best decision was making that weight jump because I've been able to fully develop, in terms of just physical strength, being able to really fulfill in my body. I walk around between 200 and 205 pounds now. So, it's been a great jump for the development of my wrestling career and now having the most success that I've been able to have on the international level.
2 generic wrestling questions. 1, is it harder to cut weight or to gain weight? And does that vary from person to person?
They're both very difficult. I think typically most people are more comfortable cutting weight because you feel like you have a perceived advantage of strength or size. So in wrestling, typically, if you have the choice, most people are going to go down. But to go up in weight, is just kind of two ways. You can go up and just go up because when you're constantly making weight, there's a discipline factor because you have to control your weight all the time. When you're going up in weight, sometimes it takes away the discipline factor, and you can go up and kind of get a little careless. But going up and properly, for me, it's been a 2-year plan to get to where I am, but really a 4-year plan. It's for 2020, but we're halfway through the Olympic cycle right now, and continue to implement small things over time. I work with Sam Calavita in the training lab in California. He's known that he works a lot of very high-end MMA fighters. So I'm very fortunate to have a relationship with Coach Cael. And really, when going to 86 kilos, I consulted with him, and he's been instrumental, he and his wife, Monica, in basically my success on the international level. A lot of it goes to them because I was able to not only transition to 86 kilos, but be a better version of myself than I've ever been. I can score a lot of points, but I'm in great shape, and I'm also very strong. So two things that I never really had strength in my wrestling. I always had a lot of technique and very focused mentally, but to be able to add the strength and conditioning side to it as well has made a huge difference in my career.
So, I mean, is it fair to say, though, when you cut weight, you're sacrificing stamina, and when you gain weight, you're losing speed, you're sacrificing speed? I mean, because that's generally the thing in boxing, right? If you move weight classes, when you go up a weight class, you're going to be a little bit slower. If you go down a little, or if you cut down a weight class, your stamina kind of goes with you.
I think, I'd say traditionally it probably is right. For me, going up in weight class, just because I'd been a lightweight my whole life, so it's like saying you take a boxer who's been boxing at a lightweight and then going up to a heavier weight, naturally going to be a little bit faster than his opponents. And also because I'm going up in weight class, I increased my stamina. So I was able to increase both,
gotcha.
While going up in weight, where it is unique. I think it's just being small and growing up. But I would say on a traditional scale, when you cut weight, you're going to sacrifice your conditioning and your strength, just because, most guys are not going to cut weight properly or with the proper discipline. We're going up in weight class, you're going to probably sacrifice strength first. Those guys are going to be a little bit stronger than you because typically up weight class, they're also going to be coming down.
Right.
So, it's just a balance.
David, the other generic wrestling question I kind of had is take me through the progression of what the talent is like and how much different the competition is when you went from high school into college and now college into international. Is there a big jump from one to the other? What is that like as far as the competition you face?
Yeah, I mean, each one is a huge jump. From high school to college, the biggest difference is, especially, if you're an elite high school wrestler, you're going to get challenged maybe a couple times a year, maybe your state tournament, but you're traditional. If you're in your wrestling, your league or your conference, or you're going to be much better than your opponent. So you're not going to really get challenged too often. Where in college, if you have 30 matches in a year and you wrestle in the Big Ten, pretty much everybody wrestling in the Big Ten is a state champion at minimum, so you're wrestling good competitors on a day, every day. And also just your room, your room is filled with a lot of high-end guys, where in high school, you probably were the best kid in your room. So that's the difference between high school and college. College international, you're basically taking guys. So in the United States, we wrestle folk style primarily. The Olympic style is freestyle. So the rules are a little bit different. So in international, you're wrestling guys that specialize in freestyle wrestling at 8 years old. Where I've been wrestling folk style my whole life, they've been wrestling specifically freestyle and preparing for world championships. So you have age group world championships along the way. You have 15 and under, you have 20 and under, you have 20, you have these different age group world championships. So those guys are, while we're preparing for the national tournament, they're preparing for the world championship. So basically international wrestling, guys that win age group world titles typically win senior world titles because they've been developing those skills along the way. So I think just, the difference, just positioning becomes really important internationally. Just in wrestling, positioning is like a super basic thing, but if you're a talented guy, in college, you can get away with not having great positioning because you can wrestle through the positions. Where international, a lot of that is focused on, positional work and this specifying certain areas because they've been doing it their entire lives. It's been their job since they were a little kid. And for those guys, for a lot of those countries, it's their way out. They're from they don't have a lot of resources, but in those countries, if you win a world championship, your life is changed instantly. You get $1 million, a house, and a car, where you may not have had a house to live before the world championships. So, they're training, and that is their opportunity, to make a life for themselves. So it's not in college, it's a little bit of a game. You're on a scholarship and you're trying to be a world champion or national champion. But when you get to the international level, it's your livelihood. If you don't make a world team, you have one full year to try and make one again. And if you start not making world teams, you can't provide for your family. So I think that's the big difference as you kind of progress through the three of them.
All right, so you're in that process right now. As you mentioned, we're halfway through the Olympic cycle with the games coming up in 2020. Now, I mean, you're basically, almost 3/4 of the way through now with 2019 right upon us. But I can't even fathom what it's like to go through this and the amount of pressure, because as you just said, if you fail here in 2019 at the World Championships, does that eliminate you from Olympic consideration?
It doesn't eliminate you, but it definitely makes it more difficult. So, so like I said, there's 16 countries qualify for the World Championship and only 6 weight classes. So this year there's 10 weight classes at the 2019 World Championships. So there'll be a lot of people start gravitating to those 6 Olympic weight classes this year, because the first qualification for the Olympics is the 2019 World. So my weight class, 86 kilos, which is an Olympic weight class. The top 6 guys, the World Championships, those countries are qualified for the Olympics. So, the guys that wrestle in the finals, the first and second, and basically in wrestling, each finalists, the guys they beat go to a mini tournament to get to wrestle for third. So you have the first, second, you have 2/3, and you have 2/5. So those top 6, those countries will qualify for the Olympics. So that's already a huge opportunity, because now in 2020, you can now focus on just preparing for the Olympics rather than, okay, I need to go qualify this spot, or I need to continue to try and qualify myself. Additionally, in the United States, if you are a returning world medalist, you are already in the finals of the next year's qualification process.
Okay.
So this year, I winning the World Championships in 2018. In 2019 in the United States, I'm already in the finals of the qualification process. So I only need to wrestle one guy in a best 2 out of 3 format. So the rest of the guys in my weight class in the United States will have to wrestle.
Do you know who that is, though? Do you know who you're wrestling at?
They'll have to wrestle next year in the Nationals. Okay. Basically, in the winner of the Nationals will then wrestle to me.
And it could be from any country, right?
No, that's just in the United States.
Okay, that's just United States.
So that would be just the United States. So next year in 2009, we only send one representative from our country to the World Championships, and only one representative to the Olympics. And each country has its own qualification process to pick. In some countries they just pick. They say, hey, you know what? I think you're our best guy. You're going to the Olympics. We do have a process, that they follow to get to the spot. It's
probably not as complicated as I'm hearing it and listening to it. I mean, I'm sure there's a simple diagram that could get me through, but does it seem like it's a fair system in the way they do it?
It's based on, the best way to predict a future medalist.
Okay.
Is by a proven medalist. So, basically, over time.
There's some logic to that.
If you've medaled at the World Championships, you have a good opportunity. You are more highly likely to medal in the future. So that is the way that our system is made up, and it is very challenging. So, like I said, I went 4 years without making a world team. During those 4 years in the United States, the only guys that I lost to we've all gone on to win world championships. So at the time it was Jordan Burroughs, myself, Kyle Dake. We've all gone on to win world championships. And then at one point it was Kyle Dake, myself, and Jaden Cox, and all 3 of us have won world championships. So, at that level, when you are talking about 2 of the best guys in the world, one guy going through a mini tournament, wrestling 4 matches, and then later that day, wrestling a fresh guy of your caliber in a 2 out of 3 format, it's challenging. And I think it's a credit to, our country having a lot of depth right now and having a lot of talented guys. But that's just when the rules were made, it was made to basically, if you're a medalist, you have a higher opportunity to win a medal in the future. But right now our team, we have, and based off the 2018 18 world team, we have 6 world champions and I think 9 world medalists on a 10-man team. So, I mean, it's, or 10 world medalists on a 10-man team. So we have a lot of, we were team world champions in 2017 and we were second 2018. So right now our country is trending in a great direction in terms of depth and, putting really high level guys on the world team that are having success against the best in the world.
You're ranked number 1 in the world. And I mean, do you feel the pressure every day to do this? Is this more about what you set out to do, or is this just about achieving a goal? I mean, where is your mental mind state with all this?
I think at one point in my life, when I'm writing those goals down, I used to put a lot of pressure on myself and I feel a lot of anxiety when I go out and compete. At this point in my life, I feel zero pressure. I love what I do. I'm very fortunate to be able to every day wake up and pursue my goal of being the best in the world. I can provide for my family, and I love it. I love wrestling. I love competing. I love the training aspect. So I want to wrestle the best guys. I want to see where I'm at. I want to wrestle the best guys in the world. I want to see what I'm doing, how it's working, and continue to challenge myself. And this year at the World Championships, I weighed in, and it's a random draw. So the seeding process doesn't really have much effect. So when I got my draw, I had the absolute toughest draw you possibly could have. So right off the bat, I had the number 2 pound for pound wrestler in the world from Iran. He was an Olympic champ in 2016. He was a world champ 2017. And we wrestled first round. And then the winner of that had a guy from Belarus, who had just won one of the really tough tournaments in the world. The next match was a guy from Cuba who I had 2 pretty close matches with this year already. In the semifinals, we would have likely the guy from Russia who was a European champ to get to the finals. That was just to get to the finals. So very first match, and if you lose a match and the guy that beat you doesn't make the finals, you're done. You don't wrestle anymore. So,
wow.
But a lot of people were asking how I felt, and when I saw the bracket, my heart started pounding and. I just started smiling because it was an opportunity that I had the opportunity to wrestle to prove that I was the absolute best guy in the world. I was going to wrestle every single best guy, including the best guy first round. And, we went out and we wrestled, and the match, I was losing 6-2 at the break. And I came back to score 11 straight points and win the match 11-6 to start off the match, very first match of the tournament. And went on to have a great tournament. In the semifinals, I was wrestling a guy from Russia. Again, I was losing. I actually had gotten kicked in the face and borderline knocked out in the match. And I feel like there was nothing that was going to stop me because I was so determined to be a world champion. I got back up and I came back in the second period and ended up winning that match 7-5. So going on and facing through that adversity throughout the competition, but it's because I just felt I was so excited to be there. I don't feel pressure. And every time I go to practice, I love what I do, and I get challenged every single day by my partners and my coaches, and I'm just excited to go out and do it.
Well, on that note, David, we wish you the best of luck, continued success in everything that you're doing. Obviously we're all rooting for you and pulling for you, but just an incredible story, incredible career, and we hope it ends up with you at the Olympics in 2020. And just want to say thank you for being part of Kill the Quit, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you for it was a great opportunity.
This has been another edition of Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Clip. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. We'll talk to you next week.
WFON
and W292EV Marietta,
a Dickey broadcasting station.
Live from the Wellstar Health System Studios.
1230 and 106.3 FM, The Sports X.